Thank you all very much for joining us this evening, and welcome to our Zoom dinners. Friday nights have become a habit here. So I'm so glad all of you could join us. You can watch us on YouTube, on our Facebook page at Busboys and Poets, my own personal Facebook page, and Shallal. And thank you again for joining us, and tell your friends to tune in as well. Since 1998, Congresswoman Barbara Lee represents the 13th Congressional District in California. Currently, she serves on the Budget Committee and the very powerful and coveted Appropriations Committee, which oversees all federal government spending. This past January, she became the first African-American to chair the House Appropriations Subcommittee on State, Foreign Operations, and related programs. Thank you so much for joining us, Congresswoman.
Andy, really happy to be with you. Nice seeing you.
It's a pleasure to see you. I watched you yesterday during the NIAC Gala with the National Iranian American Council, and you said some really wonderful words. And thank you so much for standing up for those that oftentimes are left behind. I wanted to ask you, first of all, you win every time you run, and sometimes by over 90%. What's your secret sauce?
Listen. This is about connecting with people, constituents. It's about bringing, hopefully, government to the people. It's about making sure that I listen to my constituents because they have great ideas, and figuring out how to turn their ideas into policy or funding priorities, and then letting my constituents know what I'm doing and how I'm fighting for them each and every day.
Well, you've always been a very principled warrior, really, for peace, if I could say that word, warrior and peace in the same breath. You've worked at the NAACP. You were a member of the Black Panther Party. You also worked for Shirley Chisholm's campaign, which I found really exciting to learn about, of course. And many people don't know much about Shirley Chisholm and her significance. I know you worked on a campaign. You were a delegate for her in 1972, I think in Miami, if I'm not mistaken, at the National Democratic Convention. Can you tell us a little bit about the woman that Shirley Chisholm was?
Sure. A lot of people don't even know who the first African-American woman was elected to Congress. And so that's Shirley Chisholm. And so I've been working for years trying to make sure her legacy is lifted up and preserved. But Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, first Black woman elected to Congress, first woman and the first African-American to serve on the Rules Committee. And she also ran for president. She was the first African-American and the first woman to run a serious campaign for the presidency. She actually paved the way for Jesse Jackson to run, and then for Barack Obama to run and win. And she is a person who I got to know very well. I did not work for her as a staffer. I worked for our beloved Congressman Ron Dellums, who I miss tremendously. But Shirley Chisholm was on the Hill then as a member and mentored me and guided me and helped me through understanding the dynamics around racism and sexism on Capitol Hill. And she was a phenomenal woman. She was an early childhood educator. She cared about children. She cared about making sure she broke the glass ceilings for Black and brown people. And she was a very committed woman to making sure that Black women, especially, could be seen as equal. And she fought like you would not believe to lift up Black women wherever she was in terms of gender equality and in terms of ensuring inclusion and diversity. But also, she said that we've got to break through and be revolutionaries. I mean, she was not a moderate or a liberal. She was a very progressive woman. She was against the Vietnam War. She talked about poverty. A lot of people don't know she spoke fluent Spanish. She was a daughter of immigrants. So she talked about immigrant rights. So all of the issues we deal with right now that are current, she was always on the right side of those issues.
That's pretty amazing. And I think you obviously have followed much in her footsteps, but I want to ask you, I think you have some very strong stands on issues, and you're very principled. I think you're known as that. You were the only voice against the unlimited use of force after 9/11, when George W. Bush back then just asked for a blank check and everyone signed it. You refused to do that. That took a tremendous amount of courage. You were under threat. You had to have security all the time and all of that. What what drives you? Can I ask you that? Like, I know that everyone comes to Congress with the intention of wanting to do good. What makes what makes Barbara Lee Barbara Lee?
Well, Andy, thank you for that. And first of all, that the resolution I voted against was a blank check. It gave any president the authority to use force forever. It was 60 words. It was a blank check. And finally, I'm trying to get the authorizations repealed and been fighting to bring the troops home from Afghanistan for the last 21 years or 20 years. So we're making progress, but it's been a long time coming. But let me tell you, my mother, my late mother, when she went to the hospital to deliver me, they wouldn't let her in the hospital. I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, because she was Black. She almost died in childbirth. I almost didn't get here. And they had to finally, because she needed a C-section, but it was too late by the time, as long story, she got in. I actually wrote a book. I think, Andy, you might have it, Renegade for Peace and Justice.
Absolutely, we did.
And so,
and he came to Busboys and Poets and signed it.
Yeah, and had a book signing. And so that story is in that book. But what happened was she finally got in, and it was too late for the C-section. And they delivered me using forceps, and I had a scar above my eye until, a few years ago. And they pulled me out, and I almost didn't breathe, and I almost died. My mother almost died in childbirth. So I have no option but to fight for, racial justice, to dismantle and disrupt racism. I've been always fighting for gender equality. My mother, she was one of the first 12 students to integrate the University of Texas at El Paso. She was the first Black woman civilian at Fort Bliss, Texas. She was a caregiver to my grandfather. She raised 3 girls. My dad was in the Army, and so he was away a lot. He was a lieutenant, he retired lieutenant colonel from the Army. And so my mother had a lot to juggle, but she always told her daughters, and I'm the oldest, she said, look, can't is not in the dictionary. So don't tell me you can't do this. And so that was one thing. Then secondly, little did I know my mother was a feminist, and my 2 aunts, because they always stood down anybody who tried to mess with them. It wasn't about saying that that I'm going to fight for, and my mother was very active in fighting in all kinds of movements. I mean, part of the Phyllis Wheatley Club in El Paso, part of the NAACP. But it was like, you're going to accept me as a Black woman. I mean, there's no question. So don't even tell me that you're not. And so that's how she raised us. It's like, what are you talking about? in terms of mistreatment. And of course, I've had all my battles that I've had to fight as a Black woman. But I guess our strength comes from my faith also, but also from my mother, who just told me to keep fighting and to be myself. And the can't was not in the dictionary. And so what can I say? And to do right. Of course, I was raised as a Catholic. Those nuns, but they were Sisters of Loretta nuns who are known for peace and justice nuns. And so I went to Catholic school for 8 years, mind you. And these nuns, little did I know, because I hated them, because they made me strict.
Anyone who went to Catholic schools remembers that.
Yeah. I had to take logic. The Monsignor had to teach us logic every day. I learned how to diagram sentences. I mean, it was a great academic education, but my sister and I were the only 2 Black students at this school, and for 8 years in Texas. So you can imagine the trauma in addition to the nuns. So I was always fighting my way through all of that as a child, to be seen and to be heard.
Yeah.
So it comes naturally, Andy.
Well, thank you. And to our benefit, I don't know what the nuns did, but obviously it didn't break you, so that's good. I think it, with nuns, it truly is, what doesn't kill you make you stronger, because damn it, they try to kill you.
Yeah. Fortunately, though, the Sisters of Loretta, and now I know who they are, but then I didn't. They're an order of nuns who are known for community service. Their motto is giving back. Their motto is helping others, the most vulnerable. Their motto is talking about fighting for the poor and for peace and justice. And so when I voted, going back to 9/11, about a year later, some nuns showed up in my office with an award, right? The Mary Rose Award. And I'm saying, huh? And they came in to visit me, to present me with this award. They had no idea that it was their order that had taught me.
Oh my goodness.
And
Oh
it was
my
like, I
goodness.
let them talk to me for about an hour, and I said, well, do you know where I went to school? No. I said, do you know who taught me? No. And I told them it was you. It was Sisters of Loretta.
Oh my goodness.
So can you believe that? That was quite a moment for me.
Oh, I can imagine.
Seen me, seen my work, and recognized what 9/11, my vote against the blank check, was about. Came to my office to present me an award and had no idea that I was taught by their order.
Oh my goodness. Did they apologize for how mean they were, or did that?
I told them. They said, but look at you now. You needed that.
Look at you now. It obviously worked. Whatever we did. So speaking of looking out for downtrodden and the poor and the unheard, oftentimes, you're the first member, if I'm not mistaken, to create a congressional task force on poverty, which you currently co-chair. I know you're working with people like the Reverend Barber and the Poor People's Campaign. Can you share with us where we are with this task force? I understand you'll be introducing something on the House on May 24th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and this is very exciting. I'm going to tell you why for me. It seems like it should have been something that's a no-brainer, but it took me forever. And I've been in Congress 23 years now. It took at least 15 of those years, 16 maybe, to get our own Democratic caucus to start talking about poverty. It was always we were fighting for the middle class, which of course we're going to do because we want to lift people out of poverty. But they never would use the P word. And it was only me standing up and saying, what about the poor? What about working people? What about low income people? Okay, Barbara, fine. Okay. So finally, I just had to say, look, and you don't know, I know what I said, but I got a little irate after 15 years. So fortunately, the speaker heard me. Steny Hoyer heard me, and we established the task force on poverty and opportunity. We have 97 members on that task force, Andy.
Oh, wow.
And the issue of poverty transcends so many, constituencies. I mean, when you look at the proportion of people in poverty, of course, it's the Black community that has the largest proportion of people living below the poverty line. When you look at numbers, white people have more.
Of course.
When you look at the Latino community, the AAPI community, when you look at Appalachia, and when you look at regions, rural communities. So it's a really a unifying issue. So finally they heard me. We set up the task force, and we've been going around before COVID, the country, having town meetings and look at what's working, what we need to do for formerly incarcerated individuals, what policies are in place, like barriers to formerly incarcerated people, like not being able to apply for Pell Grants or food stamps or housing or whatever, public housing. And so we went around the country to different districts to do that. And now we've been working, and thank God for Bishop Barber, we've been working with him and the Poor People's Campaign to develop this comprehensive approach to eliminating poverty. And we've been working with experts, economists, we've been working with activists, we've been working with members of Congress. Yesterday, we had a meeting with the task force and with Bishop Barber and Reverend Theo Harris. And I'm telling you, Andy, this resolution is going to be a major bill that we're going to roll out. And we're hoping everyone who is listening and joining us today will get their members of Congress to sign on and help us organize around it, because we're going to take this on the road and we're going to get this done. And it's a very comprehensive bill, and it doesn't tinker around the edges. This bill deals with the structural issues in terms of structural racism and structural inequality as it relates to the economic system in this country.
What's the name of the bill? Should people want to? What's the exact name of the bill? Should people want to support?
Yet. We'll definitely let you know when we roll it out. Okay.
And it's going to be rolled out on May 24th. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Very good.
Yeah. We've gone through, and what's been great about this, we've gone through a process of input from a lot of people. And each
wonderful.
time we come back and strengthen it and incorporate more. We even have in there the issues around the genocide of Native American peoples and reparations, of course, for African Americans. My Truth Commission we have in there for racial healing and transformation. So it's a very comprehensive bill.
Wonderful. I know you and Congressman Mark Pocan have created a congressional task force that's working to build support to actually cut the military budget. I'm a member of the Institute for Policy Studies. You've worked with us on some issues. I want to give a shout out to IPS and John Cavanagh. IPS supports cutting the military budget by 1/2 to $350 billion. We spend over $700 billion right now in our military budget. And we would still be safe and secure. Where are we with that task force with cutting the military budget?
Sure, and I have a resolution to cut it by 350 billion, because you're right, wouldn't tamper with our national security at all, nor would it hurt. It would help our troops, and we want to make sure they're secure and safe and get the benefits that they deserve. But what we decided to do with the Defense Spending Reduction Caucus is to do what we did last year. We had an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, which cut it by 10%. Now, mind you, 10% is just about $74 billion, right? Now, the military, that doesn't even, that's like nothing to them. That's a drop in the bucket. They can't even figure out what they spend $74 billion on. I mean, it's nothing. And
that's for the muffins and the croissants they get eat in the morning.
That's right. That's exactly it. So, but believe you me, poor people, low-income people, we can use 74 billion here to create more affordable housing, to address the issue of the unhoused. We can use 74 billion in communities with toxic dump sites in terms of the issues around climate. We can use this domestically and get a big bang for our buck. And so we're going to try again. We got 90 some votes last year. And that's unheard of to get 90, because I always vote against the National Defense Authorization Act. When I came, it was about 4 or 5 of us voting no. Now it's up to maybe 30 voting no, maybe. So you can see how hard it is to get any kind of a no vote on anything relating to defense. And so last year, though, with the 10% cut amendment, we got about 94, 95 votes. And so this is a marathon. I'm telling you, you would think that this is simple, that everybody would vote for it, but we've got to build more public awareness and support. And that's what we're doing now.
Well, the current budget is asking for an increase of $13 billion, which interestingly enough is the CDC budget is $8 billion, just to give an idea of the difference. The increase in the military budget is far more than the entire budget of the CDC. And we've seen what COVID and other pandemics that may be around the corner have done to this country. The amount of devastation that it has caused on all levels. It's really interesting where our priorities are. Yeah,
it is. And believe you me, we've been in touch with the Biden administration. We suggested they submit a budget that was minimally flat, but wanted to see a reduction. And they came up with what they consider a flat budget, but that's a 13 billion increase.
Right. So how do you counteract folks who say, oh, you're unpatriotic, you don't like the troops, you don't like the military, because God forbid, should you say anything about that in any way, shape, or form, you immediately are cornered in this spot. How do you counteract that kind of
they tried to
rhetoric?
They tried to paint me like that all my elected life. First of all, my dad was a military officer, okay? I'm a military brat. I grew up in a military family. So they can't charge me with that at all. So I have to back them up with that. Secondly, our veterans deserve more. Our veterans deserve to be treated in a way that honors their service. Thirdly, our troops need a heck of a lot more. Some of our troops are on food stamps, on Section 8. Come on. Our budget doesn't, in terms of just the cost to support our troops, this budget doesn't, in my estimation, do that. And then it's very patriotic to be able to take on waste, fraud, and abuse in the military, where you have taxpayer dollars going to waste, building missile systems that will never be used, buying exorbitant items for the military. You know what? I've been trying to get the Pentagon audited for the last 10 years. It's never been audited. The only agency that hasn't had an audit. And then when they finally came up with some kind of a half audit, they had to kick it back because it was just not transparent. It was a bad audit. And so nobody could tell me that I'm being unpatriotic by saying, I want to protect your tax dollars. I want to protect the troops. I want to make sure they're not put in harm's way in forever wars that will continue unless we stop these wars and look at, and I chair now the subcommittee on state and foreign operations. And, that's the subcommittee that prioritizes development and diplomacy. There are three stools of our foreign and military policy: defense, development, and diplomacy. Well, I have all the non-defense money under my jurisdiction. So I'm saying, hey, gang, we need to increase that budget so we don't need so much for defense if we do this the right way and make sure that our development assistance is used in a respectful way in countries that need us to help. And so, I've been dealing with this, after 9/11, they called me a traitor. My opponent went up with Rudy Giuliani, check this, and marched in a Veterans Day parade holding a sign of me laughing with the World Trade Towers in the background burning. And it said, Barbara Lee hates America. Can you imagine how I felt about that? So it's something that I just have to, and people who, peace is patriotic, okay? And so we have to, and I've been able to just kind of, I won't say ignore it, but just know I'm on a mission. And they can call me what they want. But once I have an opportunity to explain my position, people start saying, oh yeah, we get it. Finally, Andy, let me just tell you one story, okay? I supported Kamala Harris for president. So I went all over the South campaigning for her as a surrogate. I was in South Carolina at an event, a lot of security, the whole bit. I was representing her. This white man comes up with his child, right? And I looked at him, and the security kind of looked at him, and he didn't look too cool, right? He came up to me. He had tears in his eyes. He said, I brought my son to witnesses. He said, I want to tell you, I was one of those who threatened you. He said, I was one of those who condemned you and called you a traitor. He said, and I want my son to see me apologize to you because now I know exactly what the deal was. He said, and I am so sorry. And his son's standing there and he's crying, right? And that has happened throughout the country over and over and over again. Okay. So there's hope. And I'll always, and that was just recent. That was just, during the presidential primary. And he just came through and like I say, he didn't look like a progressive.
Wow.
And he brought his son to witness him apologizing to me. That's the honest to God truth.
That's amazing. What a beautiful story.
Yeah.
That gives you a little bit of wind under your wings, doesn't it? It's amazing.
Yeah.
Those little moments.
Then you get these glimmers of hope.
Yeah, exactly. I know you mentioned something about reparations, like the late Congressman John Conyers, you're a great proponent of reparations, and not just for Black people, but also for Native people, for Native Americans. Can you tell us where we are with this issue of reparations? I know this has been lingering for, as long as I can remember. I mean, John Conyers was there for a long time. Even the study of reparations has been held up. What's the, I don't think we as a country can move beyond our racial divide unless we talk about reparations.
Yeah.
You don't hurt someone and say, get over it. That doesn't happen in life. That doesn't happen in a family. That doesn't happen on individuals. It doesn't happen. And so where are we with that? And why has it taken so long for something? When President Clinton talked about the Japanese internments, reparations were given. I remember at the White House, they had a ceremony and they gave them money. But what is the holdup here?
Yeah, and it's been 30 years. I mean, one of the first bills that I co-sponsored when I first came to Congress was H.R. 40 with Congressman Conyers. And my predecessor, Ron Dellums, was probably the first member, I think, to sign on before I came. And so it's been a long time coming. But let me tell you, H.R. 40, repairing the damage, it is so important. And to see finally, and I was in the Judiciary Committee hearing room a couple of weeks ago when it finally got out of committee. I mean, that was a big deal. And to hear the debate from the right wing and the Republicans, it was awful. They had no even compelling argument. I mean, they were talking about the chairman Nadler supporting expanding the Supreme Court. I mean, so that was how the debate went. They could not even talk about why they opposed it. So it's taken so long because white supremacy is alive and well in America, and we have members of Congress who really aren't quite understanding why, especially some of their districts, why reparations for African Americans is so important. And they don't understand and the connection between 401 years ago and Mr. Floyd being killed. 401 years ago, Black people dying disproportionately from COVID. 401 years ago, the huge wage gap, why Black people's unemployment rates always twice that, so making those connections in terms of systemic racism, we've been doing, and I think that's what's pushing it a lot, and hopefully we'll get it to the floor pretty soon. But folks, the other thing is a lot of people, and I've talked to a lot of people about reparations, and this is one of the things that also holds back the movement, but I think it's making a lot of progress now. But people think, well, they say I wasn't around. Why would you want to penalize me? And this is not my problem. And my ancestors, yeah, they may have been bad, but why now? And I always say, look, this is not about you personally. This is about a system of government that legalized slavery. This is about your government that brutalized and killed over 250 million people. This is about, over 250 years. This is about 4 million people dying because of your government, and the government has a responsibility to repair the damage of what they've done. Then you have to walk them through Reconstruction. Then you have to go to the Black codes. Then you have to go to all of the points in history. Veterans, Black people, Black men and women, no veterans benefits. Not being able, California Fair Housing Act didn't pass till 64. I couldn't even buy, my dad and mother wanted to buy a house in an area that was burning crosses in the 60s, right? Well, I represent that area now, but in the 60s, yeah, it's quite a story. They couldn't buy a house. So you have to really explain how this is built up and how the government has a responsibility and a duty to repair the damage, because we'll never be economically equal, or the parity and the dream of an America that's inclusive and equal for all will never happen until you have reparations. And finally, let me say, I introduced a bill, it's HR 19, called for Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. 40 countries have had these truth commissions, where you have finally the moment of truth, day of reckoning, where people come forth and bring forth the information about the historical context, because we can't have healing until the truth is told. And then we transform through reparations. And so we have to have, and those bills are complementary to each other, but we certainly want reparations to get done and finished and signed. And so we can move forward with the second part of this. But believe you me, we have to have these moments in history now. This is the time now in America to come to grips with our past that is still, the chains of slavery have not been broken. And we have to understand that. And that plays out each and every day as it relates to structural and systemic racism.
And for those people that need to know more about this, there's been so many good documentaries that have been out. One of the latest ones, Exterminate the Brutes, which is quite a remarkable documentary that just recently is out. I believe it's either on Netflix or Amazon Prime, but one of those. But it's a great kind of historical overview of the United States, and a book by Dr. Blaine and Dr. Kendi that just recently was out. We had Dr. Blaine here last week talking about 400 Souls, which speaks about the history of the United States from a different lens, from the Black lens, and had 80 different writers speak about a certain segment of history told from a different perspective than the perspective that we've all gotten used to. I wanted to ask you a little bit about foreign policy, if you don't mind. I know that this administration has really done a lot of really great stuff domestically. On the foreign front, it seems to be lagging a little bit. For example, sanctions. I know that the sanctions on Iran, as an example, has been really devastating to the people of Iran, and really has not done much to hurt the government, as sanctions oftentimes don't. Where are we with that joint comprehensive plan of action that was around the Iran nuclear deal that really started the ball rolling to try to have some normalcy and some sense of diplomacy, to be able to move forward? with normalizing relationships with Iran and some of our other adversaries. Where are we with that? And why
Well,
has this administration refused to move on this stuff?
Yeah. Well, of course, Donald Trump pulled us out of the JCPOA.
Yes.
Once we agreed, and the Iranians agreed to the agreement, as well as the Europeans and others. Secondly, and I was part of the help in putting the votes together and working with the Obama administration. We call ourselves the Gang of Eight, really helped with the first JCPOA. And so for Trump to come and do what he did was just outrageous. When the IAEA, the International Agency, Atomic Energy, IAEA, conducted the investigations, and they were monitoring it, and they said Iran was in compliance. They were in compliance. And so this administration, to their credit, it's taken a long time, too long for me, but they're trying to work through getting back in to the JCPOA. But of course, you have these added sanctions now. And so that adds another element to it because, the Iranians want these sanctions removed before they come back in. And so they're trying now to get to this negotiated solution. And we're working on the Hill, the Gang of Eight, to try to show that there is support on the Hill for this, and to try to continue to work with the Biden administration to make sure that this is done. Because we don't want, I'm one to get rid of nuclear weapons too. We cannot have non-proliferation from any country anywhere in the world. We need to reduce our nuclear stockpiles in this country. And so we can't have Iran or any other country. Once, if we don't get back into the JCPOA, Pandora's box is going to be open. You're going to see more countries in the Middle East developing nuclear weapons everywhere in the world. So it's important that we get back in, and both need to get back in with full compliance. And that the other issue is, because we pulled out, they began enriching uranium again. And, there's some issues that probably put them, on a different track, but they have insisted that they can come back into compliance very quickly if we come back into compliance. And so it's coming, I think. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I just have to say this administration is doing everything it can do to get us back in.
Well, it really can't come soon enough, because especially in this time of COVID and all that, having sanctions is so devastating in so many levels.
Yeah.
And as we have seen, we're now global, right? We're not isolated. So what happens in one place soon comes to us or goes to other places. So it's really important for us to think of ourselves as a global citizen as opposed to isolationists.
Yeah. Now with the pandemic, I think more people who really weren't that into global foreign policy issues maybe now are beginning to understand. And one of my commitments as chair of the subcommittee is to try to bring more of the public into this space, to begin to understand that what affects people abroad affects us here at home, and we need to have a stronger movement in this country for foreign assistance and for foreign policy changes. Right now, I don't see a lot of Black and brown people in America marching and protesting, in terms of foreign assistance and where it should go. And so I'm trying to broaden that movement a little bit so that members of Congress can see that they have the support in the streets for foreign aid and development assistance and diplomatic initiatives rather than defense.
And also the issue with Cuba, of course, we started to normalize relationship with Cuba under the Obama administration, and then it went way back when Trump took over, and we're back almost to square one with Cuba. Are we seeing any movement on that from this administration? What is your sense of
Andy, I don't know
Blinken?
if you know it, but I've been trying to lift this embargo since since the mid 70s, okay, like 76. Yep. And I've worked with the Obama administration to begin to normalize relations. And I was really proud to be with him when he went down to Cuba, and also with Secretary Kerry then when we opened the embassy. So we made some modest steps toward normalization, recognizing there were a lot of issues that still have to be dealt with. So what happens? Trump comes in and just removes all of everything. Set us back 50 more years. Now,
Exactly.
what is happening though, and yeah, I think the Biden administration is moving too slow. They're doing a policy review. I've been in touch with them almost daily about this, because what I see happening and what this administration and what American foreign policy, what the experts and all the people in academia and in this space are talking about now is China's involvement in the world. You know, what China is doing on the continent of Africa, what China is doing in the Caribbean. Well, guess what? Just today, I got a report China is in Cuba working on some bilateral
Absolutely.
agreements. Okay?
Absolutely.
So now what's the United States going to do? Whine about that? Last week, I got a report, and it's true that China was there helping on the COVID piece. Okay,
Sure.
So what's the U.S. gonna do? Whine about that? And so I'm just saying, let's get out there. The
Exactly.
French are building hotels there. I mean, it's a ridiculous policy. And the Cuban
it's a
people are
no-brainer,
suffering.
right?
They rather
Absolutely.
do business with Americans. They'd rather. So believe you me, and this is like, I co-chair the Cuba working group. It's bipartisan, believe it or not. We have Republicans, so they're not as vocal as I am about it, but we're working on a strategy.
Well, thank you. We love you very much, and I know you have to go, but I'm going to ask you one last question.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to have a dinner party that you're going to invite anybody from history to, anyone that you want, and several people if you'd like. Who would be at that party?
My mother and Shirley Chisholm, and my dad.
Oh, I love it.
Those will be the three.
Good choice.
And I miss them all.
Wonderful. Well, we love you very much. Thank you for doing the work that you do. We really appreciate you, and thank you for your voice. You are always principled voice on many, many issues. We look forward to working with you on many other things.
Be able to come have a meal one day, and one of your God, you're everywhere now, and
We're everywhere. We just opened our place in Baltimore. And I was looking at Oakland, California, actually, as a possibility. So
well, let me know. You
know, who knows? Maybe in your backyard.
Community. Yeah, but when I get back going to church, when I'm there on the weekend, I go to St. Augustine. So
yes, exactly. Near 14th Street. Thank you so much. We love you very much.
Thank you. Nice seeing you.
You take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us. I know this was shorter than normal, but the Congresswoman had to go. We appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. I'm not sure who the guest is, but we'll let you know. Please continue to follow us, and we look forward to seeing you. Until then, peace and love and all good stuff.